All right, let's dive right into this explainer of what is, without a doubt, a truly monumental 2026 Champions League semifinal clash between Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich. Look, if you're a fan of super rigid, tactical, purely defensive football, well, you might actually want to look away right now. But if you want to understand how two of the absolute greatest teams in Europe just threw caution completely to the wind to give us an instant classic, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to break down the sheer chaos, the wild tactical swings, and the unbelievable attacking brilliance that unfolded at the Parc des Princes, entirely overwhelming any defensive structures. We're starting off with this pretty bold statement right from the commentators, just to anchor exactly how historically significant and completely enthralling this matchup was. I mean, this game literally underlines the word champions in the competition's name. You honestly couldn't take your eyes off it for a second. It was nonstop, end-to-end stuff, with both sides just trading heavy blows at an absolutely breathless pace. And to really wrap our heads around the sheer magnitude of this statement, we need to look at the raw output of the match.
Nine goals. That's the total number of goals scored in this absolute chaotic thriller. Now think about it. In a high-stakes Champions League semifinal, teams are usually incredibly cautious, right? So to understand why these elite defenses collapsed, or actually, scratch that, it's more like how these world-class risk-taking attacking systems just completely overwhelmed those defensive blocks 9 separate times, we really have to look at how the momentum violently swung back and forth. Let's break this down chronologically to see exactly how this offensive explosion happened.
All right, moving right along to Act 1, the first blows.
So the match actually kicked off with a pretty measured rhythm. We saw PSG doing their usual kickoff routine, playing for territory into the corner. But Bayern Munich? They were incredibly quick to disrupt that Parisian game plan. It all started with this subtle but absolutely crucial sequence. Joshua Kimmich plays this clever little dink over the top intended for Harry Kane, forcing Vitinha into a desperate, vital header right across his own goal just to clear the immediate danger. But the ball stayed alive, and in the ensuing chaos, Luis Diaz takes a tumble in the box and boom, a penalty is given. It was a massive call early on, but it handed the visitors a huge advantage.
And of course, Harry Kane steps up to the spot and fires it home. Now, to put that into perspective, that goal marked an unbelievable 54th goal of his incredible season. Plus, it meant he'd scored for the 8th game in a row. Just absolutely unstoppable consistency. So with that strike, Bayern are suddenly out 1-0 away from home, putting all the tactical pressure squarely on PSG to respond, and consequently open themselves up even more.
From there, the momentum just swung wildly from end to end. On one side, PSG's Ousmane Dembélé gets played brilliantly through, one-on-one with the keeper. He opens his body up, looking for that far corner, but just fails to get any curl on it, missing a golden opportunity that drew massive groans from the home crowd. I mean, you absolutely expect him to score from there. But wait, at the exact same time on the other end of the pitch, Michael Olise is brilliantly engineering pure chaos. He takes on Nuno Mendes, something you rarely ever see, keeps driving, and smacks the post, nearly forcing a calamitous PSG own goal in the process. It was just non-stop action.
But PSG wasn't going to stay down for long. They found their magical equalizer, which actually prompted this awestruck quote right from the broadcast: "They score goals you can hang in the Louvre." And honestly, they kind of did. It came from a perfectly executed set piece. A cross gets whipped in with tremendous power and pace, and Joao Neves makes this brilliant run, somehow getting right across his defender to perfectly guide a header directly into the far corner. Absolute perfection. It just goes to show how individual brilliance can totally bypass even the most organized zonal marking. So the real takeaway here is that neither defense had any real answer for the opposition's attacking talent, with both teams fielding these unstoppable attacking stars. An outstanding Olise, who, by the way, was doing everything at top speed, but with his crazy calmness, helped Bayern draw level again in what was just a completely breathless first half. The heavyweights were literally just trading blows, leaving us sitting at 2-2 before we'd even started thinking about the halftime whistle.
Which brings us to Act 2, the VAR draw mark. Right before these exhausted teams could even head to the dressing rooms to catch their breath, we hit this pivotal, highly controversial turning point that completely shifted the weight of the match. It all kicked off with a blocked shot by Bayern's Alphonso Davies, who then visibly threw his hands behind his back. Play went on for a brief second, but then the referee blows his whistle, signaling he's listening to his video assistant referee. Official Carlos Del Cerro Grande jogs over to the monitors to have a look for himself, while the entire Parisian crowd watches in just absolute, tense anticipation.
Well, the VAR check quickly confirmed that the ball did indeed strike Davies' arm, so a penalty is awarded to PSG, much to the absolute disbelief of the Bayern Munich players. I mean, they were stunned. But despite the immense pressure of that moment, Ousmane Dembélé steps up, he completely soaks up all that tension and easily tucks the penalty away, triggering probably the loudest roar of the night all around the Parc des Princes.
If we just take a step back and look at the wild pendulum swings of those first 45 minutes, we went from Kane's opening penalty through those stunning equalizers that brought us to 2-2, right up to Dembélé's stoppage time penalty. It perfectly illustrates the sheer roller coaster of momentum, sending PSG into the locker room with a slim, really hard-fought 3-2 lead. Now, if you thought they were going to come out in the second half and just sit back to defend that lead, you'd be entirely wrong.
And that takes us into Act 3, Parisian perfection.
The moment the second half kicks off, PSG shifts into absolute overdrive. They suddenly threaten to turn this super tight thriller into a complete and utter rout. First up, Achraf Hakimi finds himself with a ton of time to consider his tactical options, and he just delivers a vicious cross into the box. The Bayern defense completely botches the clearance, and Kvicha Kvaratskhelia is right there to capitalize, finishing clinically to give PSG a daylight lead for the very first time. But they definitely weren't done. Mere moments later, Dembélé finds the back of the net again, exploiting these widening massive gaps in Bayern's tracking. In the literal blink of an eye, what was a tense 3-2 game absolutely exploded into a 5-2 Parisian advantage.
Right at that moment, the exhilaration in the stadium was practically palpable. As the broadcast so perfectly noted, this is Parisian perfection, Bayern blown away. And honestly, watching the flow of the game right then, it genuinely looked like Bayern Munich had been permanently dismantled. The thousands of Parisians in the stands were just in absolute disbelief at the high-risk, high-reward attacking football their team was executing to absolute perfection.
But hold on to your hats, because here comes Act 4, the Bavarian resilience.
Look, a lesser team would have completely folded under the crushing weight of a 5-2 deficit away from home in a Champions League semifinal. But Bayern Munich, they absolutely refused to die. They engineered this rapid, stunning fight back. First, Kimmich delivers a lovely ball into the box, and PSG's defense inexplicably just lets Dayot Upamecano go, giving him a free pass to easily glance a header right into the far corner. It was way too simple a goal to concede, really highlighting the mental fatigue that was setting in for the defense. Then Harry Kane drops deep, dragging defenders way out of position, and delivers a brilliant threading pass to Luis Diaz. And Diaz's execution here is just phenomenal. He takes a perfect first touch, swivels his hips, faking to one side, stays on his right, and shows the ultimate composure to finish it off. After a really quick VAR check for offside, the goal stood.
Suddenly, out of nowhere, we are staring at a frantic 5-4 scoreline that just violently emerged from this breathless sequence. In a flash, Bayern dragged themselves right back into the tie, totally capitalizing on PSG's defensive lapses and bringing the tension in that stadium right back to an absolute knife's edge. Just one single goal in it again. 9 goals total. Both defenses just utterly shattered by pure attacking brilliance.
Which leads us to our final act, a breathless finale.
With the score sitting at 5-4, you had 22 completely exhausted players just throwing tactics entirely out the window. Those final few minutes were an absolute blur of desperate defending and crazy near misses. We saw guys like Jonathan Tah frantically keeping the ball in play when it looked 100% certain to drift out, just absolutely determined to keep Bayern's attacks alive. We saw PSG's goalkeeper Safonov having to physically punch away these incredibly dangerous corners from deep within a sea of bodies. It was end-to-end, it was exhausting, and it cemented this as an absolute classic that you just couldn't tear your eyes away from.
And honestly, that just brilliantly illustrates the magic of two-legged football, doesn't it? Leaving us with a massive 5-4 aggregate scoreline, this brilliant, chaotic, totally beautiful match forces us to ask one simple, tantalizing question. After witnessing 9 goals, controversial penalties, incredible fightbacks, and sheer attacking perfection, how on earth can the upcoming rematch possibly top what we just saw? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.